Okay, let's talk some chess. Have a really crazy, fun, attacking game here. This is considered the London Immortal game between Adolf Anderssen and Lionel Kieseritzky. Sorry if I mispronounced it. The game description is in the video description below. This was played in 1851, and we have a lot of really amazing games from Anderssen. This one might just be the craziest. So Anderssen is playing with white pieces. He starts with e4, black responds with e5, and Anderssen opts for the king's gambit. So he puts his pawn on f4. This allows black to take the pawn back, so you're sort of giving up a pawn, but gaining some fast development and perhaps control the center. This is not played today in high level games because with any gambit, if you play the proper defense, it will be at the disadvantage of the player who actually played the gambit. But back in those times, you could get away with this in high level games. So Anderssen develops his bishop to c4. The trouble with this is it allows a really nice queen development move with tempo. So queen to h4 check, obviously checking the black king. You could block with pawn to g3, but then after takes, the queen can pick up the rook or even play another check if you'd like. So you don't really want to block with the pawn. Instead, Anderssen plays the correct move, king to f1. And here black plays sort of a gambity move, an Evid's gambity move of his own, plays b5, giving up the pawn. He says, if you can give up a pawn to get a better position, well, and so can I. Black wants to get the bishop off of this nice diagonal attacking the f7 square, and Anderssen happily gobbles up the pawn with his bishop. Now, black develops a piece with knight to f6. It's always good to get your pieces out, and this does come with an attack on the e4 pawn. The problem, as we're going to see, is it cuts the retreat squares for the queen, and the queen cuts those squares away. And the queen had a really nice first move to h4, delivering check to the king, but now the queen is a little bit overextended, and white is going to have the opportunity to develop his pieces, push his pawns forward, all of those with tempo, attacking the black queen, making her move around while he gets his pieces in a better position. So that starts with knight to f3. Obviously, this comes with an attack on the queen, so that's a great move, developing a piece and forcing black to retreat, and black puts his queen back on h6. White plays d3 because this e4 pawn was under attack by the knight, and now it is nicely defended, and black chooses to play knight to h5. This is a nice move because it opens up kind of this escape for the queen. These escape squares. It also puts the knight in an interesting position, as we'll see. And here, white responds with knight to h4. This opens up a discovered attack of the white queen on the black knight on h5. So now the black queen cannot retreat because it would be leaving the defense of the black knight. So instead, black plays a very nice looking move, queen to g5. This keeps the defense of his knight, attacks the undefended white knight and the undefended white bishops. This is a really nice fork, and Anderssen deals with this by playing knight to f5. This simultaneously defends the knight with the pawn and blocks the queen from attacking the bishop. So nice move there. And here it looks like you can kick the knight away with g6. This wouldn't necessarily work, and we're going to see a similar reason why this wouldn't work in the line that actually occurred. So instead of trying to kick the knight, black actually just played c6, which attacks the bishop. And here Anderssen just completely ignored this threat, as he would have done if black had played g6 trying to kick the knight. Anderssen pushes g4 right away. And this is a tricky move because you can't take en passant because it opens up a discovered attack of the dark squared white bishop to the queen. Obviously you can't just ignore this because your knight is attacked. So here, black is forced to retreat the knight to f6. Again, though, this cuts off the retreat of the queen. So that's, not a very happy square for the knight to be on. And here, Anderssen, again, just completely ignores that the bishop is hanging from the pawn on c6, and he calmly plays rook to g1, getting more firepower behind this pawn. Because currently this pawn is attacked twice. The knight and the queen are doubling up on the pawn, and only the white queen is defending. So Anderssen opts to defend this pawn instead of defending his hanging bishop. Black says, okay, that's a free bishop, I will take it. And now white proceeds with his just pushing forward, h4. This attacks the queen, and you can see the queen is very quickly running out of squares. You can't take the pawn because the knight defends it. You can't take this pawn because it's defended twice. You can't take the knight because it's defended. This square is taken by the pawn. This square is taken by the knight. So the only square for the queen to retreat to is g6. But now, as you can guess, white keeps moving his pieces forward with h5. Now the last square for the queen is G5, and now White is really closing in on getting rid of that queen by playing his own queen to F3. And the next move that White would love to play is bishop takes on C4, which would obviously trap the queen. So instead here, Black retreats his knight back to G8. The knight tried to come out and be a part of the game and develop, but it just blocked the queen and got in the way of the queen. So retreats the knight all the way back to G8, and now Anderssen takes the pawn on F4, develops his bishop with tempo. And finally, Black moves his queen to relative safety on F6. So you can see that even though Anderssen gave away this pawn on B5, he got a ton. He got these pawns are nicely advanced and connected. He has these pieces developed. The rook is even on a better square than it was originally on, and Black has all of his pieces except the queen on the back rank. So pretty good compensation for a bishop. Anderssen completes development, the minor pieces at least, with knight to C3. This has an attack on the B5 pawn, and Black ignores it for now, developing a bishop with tempo. This comes with an attack on the G1 rook. And Anderssen ignores it as well for the moment. He plays knight to D5. This is a really nasty square for the knight. It can't be kicked by any pawns. It comes with an attack on the queen, and it's also threatening the C7 square, where it would fork the rook and the king. So a really nice spot for this knight. And here, instead of playing maybe the safer, I haven't looked at this position, but instead of playing D8 with the queen, this might not work, because then you're probably gonna get knight takes on G7, checking the king, and this could end up badly for White. Instead of kind of retreating, Black here goes aggressive and tries to get counterplay of his own and plays queen takes pawn on B2. This looks like a pretty good attack for Black. You have, this queen attacking the rook, this bishop attacking this rook. The rooks are pretty disjointed. They're not defending each other. So, this is kind of the crucial moment of the game where both sides are going after the other side's king. Neither king is very safe. And see if you can find a good move here for Anderssen. Okay, so hopefully you found a good move. I would be amazed if you found the move that he played, which was bishop to D6. And this just looks like a really weird move. It completely ignores the threats here. The bishop can be traded off if Black so chooses. Whenever you play a move like this, you have to think about the threat and what's the threat if you just ignored this? If you just played some silly move, well, then obviously White can take the bishop here. There are probably even better moves by taking with the knight here and putting the king in sort of a mating net. But this is clearly a threat. You can't ignore this bishop. But you also have to be careful about taking it. And that's kind of why Anderssen played it. If you trade this off, then you're going to get knight takes on D6. And now you can see the king is in a really difficult spot. He's in check. These two squares are taken away. If you play king to F8 here, then you just get queen takes on F7 mate. And if you put your king on D8, then you're going to get knight to F7 check. These two squares are taken away. The king runs back, knight back here, and then mate's going to follow. The king has to go to D8, and then the queen comes down for checkmate. So even though this looks like a crazy move, the bishop can't be taken because it will lead to mate in just a couple of moves. So instead, Black just goes ahead with his plan and plays bishop takes on G1. Bishop takes rook on G1. And I'll just pause here for a second and say, this was kind of the losing move. If Black had played correctly here, if Black had taken the queen on A1 with check, this would have been a drawn position with perfect play. I'd still rather have White here because White has a lot of dangerous pieces around the king. But I think it's tough to resist a move like bishop takes on G1. Your bishop is under attack by the white bishop. And, if the king takes, for example, the king takes back on G1, then the queen takes the rook with tempo, with check. So it's hard to resist this move. So we'll give him, we'll give him a break, and we wouldn't have gotten this amazing game if he hadn't played this. So bishop takes on G1. And now see if you can find, we already saw a crazy move by Anderssen putting his bishop on D6. Now see if you can find a 5 times crazier move for Anderssen that really sets up the final blow. Okay, so awesome. If you found it, that's super, super impressive. The move is E5. And this is a crazy move because it totally ignores that your rook was just taken. It totally ignores that the king can take the bishop. It completely ignores that your last rook is hanging on a1 and the queen can take it with check. It doesn't appear to develop or move any pieces closer to the king. It doesn't appear to generate any sort of attack. So it looks like a move without any rhyme or reason. But there's always a reason with Anderssen, and we're going to see black just takes the rook, of course, takes the rook on a1, and Anderssen moves his king to e2. And now we can sort of start to see the idea, at least for giving up the rook. It's unclear how black's going to continue this attack. This dark square bishop obviously cannot check the king. The king's in a light square. And it's tough for this queen to get at the king, at least not before like a couple of moves. You could maybe move the king to b2 and then take the pawn on c2, but that's going to take too long because Anderssen has given his opponent no time to rest. And the next move that he plays is, well, actually, sorry, it's black's move because the king just moved. Black, instead of kind of moving this queen to b2, develops the knight to a6, and this was a tough position for black already, and this was the final blow, as we're going to see. Anderssen's next move with the white pieces is what kind of shows what his plan was from the beginning. He plays knight takes on g7, and this was the whole idea. If you remember, Anderssen played this like random e5 move. This was the whole idea behind e5. Because if this pawn wasn't here, the queen could just take the knight on g7 and white would have no attack. But this pawn blocks the queen from taking the knight, and that's the only reason that he put it there. And that's why it's just a crazy move, because he saw this check coming and he didn't want the queen to have a hand in stopping it. So the king is in a world of trouble now. The bishop's cutting this, the bishop's cutting this way, the knight's checking the king, so the only move is d8. Now the white pieces have just a really excellent combination for mating the king. The next move, which again is a very saucy move, is queen to f6. This checks the king. The king has no squares to go to. They're attacked by all the pieces. So the only move here is knight takes on f6. But now Anderssen has this amazing final position, mate in one, with rook to e7, checking the king. This c7 square is protected by the knight. This e8 square is protected by the knight, and this is checkmate. And that was the whole idea behind the queen sacrifice on f6. As it stands, you can't put the bishop. So in this position, you can't put the bishop on e7 because the black knight is defending it. But once the queen gets rid of the knight, then the bishop is welcome to deliver checkmate to the king. And obviously a really amazing final position. All it takes is a couple of knights and a bishop. Black has all of his pieces basically still on the board, and a bunch that are really close to white's king, but it doesn't matter. All that matters is this mating net. And you can see why this knight development to a6 was a bad idea. It takes away the escape square on c8. He should have moved the bishop so the king can kind of hopefully escape this way. Still was a better position for white, but this just allowed for a more immediate and a more famous final mating picture. So hopefully you enjoyed that game, and we'll see you next time.